Hey everyone, it's Stacy from My Petite Garden. In today's video, we will be making some DIY homemade pond substrate, and then we'll be potting up some Hoyas in it. Then I will also be giving you some updates on how these Hoyas are doing in pond. Now, Lechuza Pond is the brand name of the substrate that we come to know as pond, but a lot of people are making their own DIY version of this. And just a disclaimer, I have never tried Lechuza Pond, so I can only share my experience using my own version of it. In my DIY version of pond, the key ingredients we will be using are pumice, vermiculite, lava rocks, zeolite, and some slow-release fertilizer. Okay, so let's get started with making the substrate. I'll also be showing you the ingredients I used in detail a little bit later on, and as always, everything will be linked in my Amazon store as well. Also, please just keep in mind that I don't measure the proportions or ratios of the ingredients. I'm basically just eyeballing everything to my own liking. Something that I wanted to note is that my version of pond is basically composed of ingredients that I can get my hands on, whereas with Lechuza Pond, from my understanding, is composed of premium ingredients, which is also what warrants its price point and could also make a huge difference in growing experience. I have here my Hoya elliptica that I have been rooting in water, and it is ready to be transplanted into a more permanent growing medium. I chose this plant as my first plant to be in pond because it's a pretty clean slate to start off with. It's never been in any other substrate aside from water. Now you will see here that I had initially potted it directly into a terracotta pot. However, you will see later on that I did end up transferring it into a small clear plastic container and then just using a terracotta as like a cachepot. And the main reason was just due to how quickly the substrate was drying out when I had it directly in terracotta. And since I didn't plan on using any type of water reservoir, the plastic container actually worked out a lot better for me. Before I show you guys the update on my Hoya elliptica, let me show you the ingredients that I used for my DIY pond substrate. For the fertilizer, I used the Osmocote Smart Release Plant Food Plus, and this is the same fertilizer that I use for the plants that I have in potting mix. For the zeolite, I use this Marine Land zeolite. I believe they use these in aquariums to maintain an ideal pH balance. For the lava rocks, I am using these that I got from Bonsai Jack. I just got a large bag of these to use as top dressing. They're also a very popular potting medium to use in bonsai. The vermiculite that I use is from a brand on Amazon called X Garden, and it is the extra chunky vermiculite. I personally prefer the extra chunky or extra coarse type of vermiculite and perlite because I find that there are usually less finer pieces when I use it in my potting medium, which makes it a little bit less dusty, and it also provides extra aeration. As for the pumice that I used, I honestly don't remember exactly what brand it was since I bought this a long time ago, but you can find pumice of various sizes on Amazon. I usually buy like an extra large bag since it's normally a better value. I think I pretty much just did equal parts of all of the different ingredients with the exception of the fertilizer. So as I mentioned previously, I did end up switching my Hoya elliptica from being directly planted into the terracotta pot into a clear plastic container about 2 weeks into it because I started noticing how quickly the substrate was drying out and I just couldn't keep up with constantly keeping it moist. I didn't get a chance to record that part of it because it was one of those late night spur of the moment things when I switched it out. And something else I wanted you guys to make note of before I show you the update. The color of the foliage of my Hoya elliptica is quite light, and this is mainly due to the amount of light I was giving it. Here we are almost a month later, and my Hoya elliptica is doing really well in my homemade pond substrate. It has also greened up quite a bit after being pulled back from the brighter light. The Hoya elliptica is definitely one that I personally do not like the sun-stressed look of it because the leaves kind of get bleached and it almost gives it this unhealthy color to it. All in all, I think the plant is enjoying this pond life, and I personally also really enjoy growing this plant in pond because it is a pretty low maintenance substrate since I can see when it needs some watering to keep the substrate moist. Moving on to my next experiment with pon, I have these two Hoya ETS 10 cuttings that have rooted nicely in water, and I will be potting them up separately. One will be potted up in my potting mix, and then the other I'll be potting in my DIY pon. I'll be giving them both the same growing conditions, and then we'll see who grows quicker. Alright, so it is now about 3 weeks later, and let's take a look at the results. The cutting growing in potting mix has started to put out a new leaf, as you can see here. And the cutting that I have growing in pon, it doesn't look like much has happened. which is a little bit disappointing, but that's okay since this is an experiment after all. I will be transferring the cutting in pond into potting mix because I am more comfortable with growing in my potting mix, and this particular Hoya is pretty hard to come by and can cost a pretty penny, so I want to grow it in what I am comfortable and confident in. However, I do know quite a few people who have had great success growing their Hoya ETS10 in pond, so this is only reflective of my personal experience with my specimen of this Hoya and in my growing conditions and my DIY pond. I will be reusing the pond for a different Hoya. I have this Hoya longicalix cutting that is rooted in water. I will be chopping this up into two parts since it rooted in two separate spots on the stem. And similar to the Hoya ETS10, I'll be potting one part of it into my potting mix and then the other into the pond. And then we'll see how they do. Alright guys, so that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will be sure to keep you guys updated on the progress of these plants. Thank you so much for watching, and make sure to subscribe, comment, and like. I really appreciate it. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!